And we'll get to the next item on the agenda, which is the business um, presentation. I have a great speaker. He's a great mentor. His name is Mr. Lee. He's an adjunct instructor at CCBC Baltimore County. He's a business consultant and he's also a coach. And, you know, he took his time out today to come speak to us about business. He helped me a lot when it comes to business. He helped me win a competition, a business competition. They also talked to me about government contracts, how you can grow your business, how you can build your business, how you can write a good, solid business plan. So without wasting any time, I will, Mr. Lee, you have the floor. So I've introduced you. Thank you, sir. And here are the ambassadors.
Well,
all
good
of us, the
evening,
ambassadors.
everyone.
Yes,
and all of you, good evening, ambassadors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. Samuel has pulled me out of my normal routine, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and go through this process this evening. As Samuel was speaking, I'm going to share a screen with you to get started. I have not a lot of time, but I'm going to share some information with you with regards to starting a business. So this evening, what we're talking about, again, Samuel introduced myself and said, you know, I'm with the Baltimore County Community College Center for Business Innovation. So it sounds like you all might be thinking about starting a business. Perhaps some of you are already in business. But what we're going to talk about this evening is a little bit of both for those who are maybe starting a business as well as for those that may be already in business. Samuel, is there a way that I can get a feel for who have it? Are people in business or are they basically startup businesses?
I'm not sure. There's some business owners here and there are people probably just want some information about how to get started. So there's a mixture of both. Yes, sir.
A mixture of both. Okay, fine. So tonight, what we're going to talk about is for those who are starting out, we're going to talk a little bit about starting a business and where you plan your business. And then we're going to talk next about launching the business for those who may be already in business. And then I'm just going to introduce you, if you will, to some other aspects of being in business. And for those that might be 2, 3, 4 years, or even 10 years down the road, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So I'm going to take that screen off and then I'm going to share another screen with you if this all works out for me. So I'm sure those of you who are in business and perhaps some of you that may be just starting a business, you've heard of this organization called Small Business Administration, commonly referred to as SBA. So SBA, I would say to you all, that's your go-to, if you will. That's your go-to source of information. Anything that you might want to know about a small business, use that as your go-to tool. Everything and anything that goes on with business is going to be on SBA's website. I think this is just sort of like, this is the Bible of small business or of business period. This is the source that whatever is happening in business, SBA is going to have the information. If SBA themselves directly don't have the information, SBA is connected with other resource partners. So other resource partners will have the information. It could be, there's an agency that's known as SCORE. There's an agency that's known as the Small Business Development Center. So SBA has connection with those agencies as well as agencies that are state government agencies as well as local government agencies. So in your business career, anything, whether again, you are starting or if you are at the end and you want to find out about business, I would recommend highly to go to SBA's website. What we're going to do this evening in the small amount of time that we have is I'm going to go to what they call the business guide. And in this business guide, as you can see on your screen now, hopefully, there's a section here that says plan your business. It's a section that says launch the business, manage the business, and grow your business. We're going to start with plan your business, and I'm just going to sort of walk through, if you will, some of these different steps. Won't go into them in a lot of detail because of the time frame that we have, but I'm just going to introduce this to you. So when Samuel reached out to me, he said, well, what we would like to talk about is planning the business. So when you get an opportunity, what I would suggest that you do is to go to this site. This is sba.gov. That's www.sba.gov. So the question is, how do you start a business? Well, we all have different ideas. And quite frankly, it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to one person may say, and if it happens to be a government person, that person will probably say, well, you start a business and you need to write a plan. Somebody else that you speak to may say, well, in order to start a business, you just need some money and just go for it. Somebody else that you know, may say, you don't need to do anything. You just start the business, just do it. So the question becomes, well, who do I believe and what's my approach? So let's just talk about what the federal government says and what's said in theory, okay? What does theory mean? Theory means, well, what the feds say, the first thing that one may want to do is do market research on the idea. The idea is something that maybe needs to be researched, maybe not, but it depends on what the venture is. So what one would do is go to this section here where it says market research and competitive analysis, and then do some research. And again, I won't go through all the clicking of all of these, but essentially what it says is research the market and find the customers that you're trying to attract. And you want to find things like, well, is there a demand for what I want? What's the market size? Economic indicators. Wow, that's a big one today because what's going on in the economy today is important. Is there an issue with location? Is there an issue with the market that you want to go into / the business that you want to go to? Is it oversaturated? What the business may be, how will I price my services or price my products? There's a ton of information on this site. And again, when one's an opportunity, I would suggest very strongly that you go to this site and start doing your research. These are this particular page here. These are some of the things that you want to start researching. You want to get statistical information about the industry. You want to see as much information as you can find about your customers, where it says consumer statistics. Who's your demographics? In other words, who are you selling to? Where are they? Where are they located? What's the economic bracket that they fall in? Can they afford the service or the product that you're trying to sell? All of this information is critical and key information. So when you have an opportunity, you go to this page and click on these links, and this will take you to a ton of information to help you do what's called market research and competitive analysis. The next part of this is, well, depending again who you speak to in terms of starting a business, probably the first thing that they'll ask or suggest that you do is write a business plan. That's usually first. Well, my question is, and my thought process is, do you need a business plan? Some do, some don't. It depends on your business. It depends on what you're trying to do. You probably have heard now recently, and especially in the past, 10, 15 years, there is a reason to have a business plan, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But a business plan is a good roadmap for you to help you to see where you're going and to make some decisions in the business. So I'm a strong advocate of writing the plan. I think it's something that is very beneficial, helps you to determine, is your idea, is it a good idea or is it not a good idea? There are lots of business plan templates that are available. There are lots of different styles that you can use. SBA, they have a template that you can use, as well as other agencies have templates. You can find them almost anywhere. There's something called traditional business plan, which gets into a lot of detail about the business. And then there's something called the lean startup plan. Not as much information about the business, but perhaps enough. I would use a lean startup business plan if the business plan is just simply and strictly for you using it internally. But if it's something that you may need to share with someone, then perhaps a traditional business plan might be more appropriate for what you're trying to do. Wherever you find a business plan template, what you'll find is what you see here. You'll see a lot of the same kinds of headings in every business plan format: marketing, service, product, the organization, management, a market analysis, a bit of the company description, and the executive summary. Pretty standard stuff in your business plans. So I would encourage you to write a plan, at least for yourself internally. 1, 2, I would encourage you to review your plan at least once per year to see if you are in fact on track with what you're trying to do. So that's the business plan. That's step number 2. Some that you may speak to in reference to starting a business may say, well, the first step that you need to do is calculate your startup costs. Well, I think that that's important because we need to know how much is it going to cost us to start this business, or even how much will it cost us to expand the business, which we'll talk about in a moment. Very important issue with regards to starting your business. This issue is so important until it's now one of those things when it comes to funding the business or calculating the startup. The calculation of the starting business weighs heavily on the amount of money that you're going to need to ask for or bring to the table to start this business. Any number of things needs to be covered: office space, equipment, utilities, insurance, accountants, other professional service providers, attorneys, consultants, employees. Those are some of the things that you need startup or you need funding for to start the business. And then oftentimes, even if you are an existing business and you're trying to grow your business, you need funding for some of these items as well. So calculating the startup cost is another part of this planning process. Let's move on. Funding the business. Well, now you've calculated how much it's going to cost you to start. The next question becomes, well, where do I get the funding from? How much money do I actually need? So those are questions that you will begin to ask yourself. How much will I need and where will it come from? Well, when starting a business or even growing a business, the first source of funding is usually from yourself. Self-funding. That's what financial institutions like to see first. What does that say to financial institutions about you and your business? It says that you are serious about your business. You are willing to put up your funds for this business to make a go of it. It's important to see that you believe in what you're trying to do. Think about it. You want to start a business, it's going to cost you $150,000 to start the business. You have no injection into the business. What does that say to, one, an investor, or what does that say to a bank? Any other funding source? You don't really believe in yourself if you're not willing to put up any funds in your own venture. So the first source is usually yourself. The next source will be, here it says an investor. That investor is actually family or friend, is who may be looked at as an investor as another source of funding. Notice those two sources come before the loan. So it's yourself an investor, family, or friend. Then comes a financial institution or either some other funding source. There's a number of other funding sources other than just banks when it comes to starting or even expanding the business. So I would work with someone to get those sources. It's information about those sources that are everywhere to be found, and then to familiarize yourself with the possibilities that are out there. So you talk about, okay, I'm starting a business. I know I'm going to do some market research. Perhaps I'm going to write a business plan. I'm going to calculate my startup costs. Then I'll figure out the funding source. So that's all great. But here's an option that is oftentimes overlooked, but I believe that it is a viable option. Buy an existing business or a franchise. It's a great way to start a business. An existing business gives you some advantages. If it's an existing business and it's a successful business, you've got a business that has a going concern already. It's been in operation for the past 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or what have you. It's a great opportunity to start your business that way. Starting with a franchise, we all know. It's a franchise, it's a blueprint already set up. You just work with that company, with that franchisee, and you have a company ready to go. You have a Subway. You have any fast food chain you have, and it's already been tried and tested. There are lots of franchises, lots of options, and it does not mean that a franchise, when you see that term, we often think that it means it's expensive. Not necessarily. Depends on the franchise. So here's your planning phase of starting a business, which is, I think, is a good place to start. The next step to perhaps starting a business may be, okay, we've gone through the planning process. We've written the business plan, did the market research. We've looked at funding sources, calculated startup. We've made a determination, said, well, no, I'm not interested in buying an existing business, nor am I interested in purchasing a franchise. Okay, that's fine. Let's move on then. So you're going to do your own thing. Got it. So now we need to do is launch the business. Let's get it going. We've written the plan. We see everything that we need to do in the plan. Now, how are we going to make this become a reality? Now, this list of to-dos, if you will, they don't necessarily fall in any particular order. So I'm just going to read off what we have here. Some of these things, they need to be done before one or the other, but you have to pick a location. If the business happens to be a business where you need a brick and mortar, but if you don't need a brick and mortar, you're home-based like myself. I'm a consultant and I do contracting work. So I'm home-based. I don't need brick and mortar. But if you are looking at a venture that's going to require a brick and mortar, then naturally you have to go out and start looking into that type of business. The other thing, as it indicates here in terms of launching the business, let's talk about the business structure. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with the different business structures. So you have the typical business structures that they talk about is a sole proprietorship, where it's just yourself in the business. And then there could certainly be a partnership, which one structure where a lot of people are a little bit hesitant about doing, but I kind of believe that it's a good way to start a business, even to expand the business. Then you have the most popular, if you will, and that's the limited liability company, LLC. So those are your options for the most part. There's other options as well, as C Corp as well as the S Corp, which as a general rule of thumb, you don't find too many startup businesses using those forms of legal structure. It's typically going to be the LLC, the partnership, or either the sole proprietorship. But you have to choose one. It's easy enough to do. I typically suggest to my clients the way that you might want to approach the structure of the business. Sit down with your accountant and have your accountant to draw a picture up of what your whole entire income sources look like personally as well as the business. Have your accountant to really understand the nature of your business and decide what structure is best for you at the particular time, especially if it's a startup business. Now, if there's anyone that's online tonight and you already are existing business owners, then your structure has already been set and you're moving forward. But those that are starting out, then perhaps you start out as a sole proprietorship. Keep this in mind. Whenever structure you start off with, especially if you start off with a sole proprietorship, you can change. You can change that as time goes on. And if the business grows and develops and it becomes more beneficial for you to be something other than a sole proprietorship. Moving along, choosing the business name, which is very obvious. You would choose the business name. Nothing earth-shattering there. You register the business, which basically is saying that you've registered that with the state of Maryland. You get what's called a tax ID number. Again, that's something that you'll get with the federal government. And if the business happens to need a license, then you'll get a license. And let me just pause here for a second. Keeping in mind, not all businesses need license. What I do as a consultant, I don't need a license for or a permit. So depending upon what type of business that you're doing, which you'll know better than I, you may or may not need a license. Then something that's important, open up a business checking account. Open up a business checking account. I would suggest that you go to a bank that you perhaps do business with currently. If you're doing business with a certain bank personally, and then go to that bank, let them know that you are thinking about you're starting a business and you want to open up a business checking account. I would sit down with that bank and ask that bank a lot of questions, especially today in light of COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in. You want to find out as much about the bank as you can. Find out if that bank is doing business at all with small businesses, and if so, what kinds of services are you offering to small businesses these days? Funding is typically what they do, but with the pandemic, funding may be a little difficult, especially for a startup business, to get from a traditional bank. So you may need to look at other sources. However, you could still use a traditional bank for various things, and that is the deposits that you might have to keep money in, to write checks if you have to write checks. So there's still some services I think that the banks will be beneficial to you for, but I would go in and have conversation to find out exactly what are they offering, especially to startup businesses nowadays. Lastly, we're talking about getting business insurance. Most businesses, you will require some business insurance, especially if you're offering something and it's in a brick and mortar. And even those of us that are consultants, business insurance as well can be important. So I think that you should sit down, and what I suggest to my clients when it comes to business insurance, sit down with your insurance carrier or make a phone call to an insurance carrier that you're doing business with currently, such as your homeowner's insurance, auto insurance. Find out if that company offers what they call commercial insurance for small business. And if so, then you will start having that type of conversation. So what have we done so far? So far what we've done is we started the planning process. Then we launched the business, and now we have it going. So then the next step that one would do in the business, you would then look at, okay, it's time now to manage what I have. What is it that I'm doing now? I need to manage my business, manage my funds, making certain that things are going the way that I want them to go. So that means sitting down with an accountant and keeping track of what the business is earning. What are my revenues on a monthly basis, annual basis? What is it that I need to do in terms of keeping track of records so that I can present to my accountant? So that's managing your business. Managing the business, if it gets to this part, and if you need, do you hire people? Are you a consultant, or do you have the kind of business that you need employees? You make that determination. And if so, this is where you then have to sit down perhaps with someone, and if it's in place that you have, start talking about things like employee handbooks, policies and procedures. Those things become important if you are in fact a person that's going to have employees, as well as a host of other things that comes into play being an employer. Very closely associated with that is paying taxes. Well, I got employees, I have taxes that I need to pay, I have payroll taxes, I have taxes for my business. My accountant, I need to be in touch with him or her so that they can help me with this kind of situation. Stay compliant. What does stay compliant mean? Stay compliant means I've paid my taxes. Remember a couple of slides back, we looked at something that said a legal liability company, an LLC. This is a place where a lot of people get very, how should I say, they sort of miss the boat. They don't pay what comes into the mail, something called a personal property tax bill, because they were a LLC or because they are an LLC. So when you don't pay your personal property tax bill, then you're not legally compliant as far as the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation is concerned. We need to pay that particular personal property tax bill on an annual basis. Legally compliant, there are other taxes, estimated taxes that a small business may need to pay on a quarterly basis, especially if you have employees. Those kinds of things are the things that this is referring to when it comes to being legally compliant. So as a business owner, you started, kicked it off. It's now time to make certain that you keep track of everything so that you are compliant as far as the state of Maryland is concerned. Again, depending upon the nature of your business, you may need certain assets to operate your business, as well as certain equipment to operate the business, but it depends on what the nature of your business is. Again, going back to myself as a consultant, and all I need is a computer and a desk, and pretty much that's it. But someone else, my son has a hauling service business, he needs a truck. He needs a truck so that he can use that to haul trash, their equipment and things of that nature. So it depends on your business. I have a client that has a bakery, a baking business. She needs stuff, she needs stove, ovens, pots and pans. So I think you get the gist of the picture there. Depends on what you need and the type of business that you're in. Marketing. This is somewhat the heart of the business. You can have a business, you can find store, a location, you can do all the preliminary things that we talked about a moment ago in reference to, registering the business, tax ID number, trade names, and those things. All of that stuff is easy stuff to do. The state says do these things. That's easy to do. Now it's time to let people know that you exist. So now it's an issue with marketing and sales. I got to let people know I exist, and I got to go out and sell my company. This is where challenge really comes in. So it's important that you create a good marketing plan and that you know exactly who your customers are, the target audience. Learn as much as you can about why are you different from your competitors? What's your advantage? Talk about your sales plan. What are you going to do to get out every day and sell what you do? What are your goals for marketing and selling? What is your action plan in regards to the goals? What are you going to be doing on a daily basis? What's your budget for marketing your business? We should start with the budget. measure, and update your plan. My recommendation is on at least an annual basis that you should do that. Figure out exactly where you are today versus where you plan to be at this time. So there's steps to take, and don't forget about operations. Get out there and spread the word about what you're doing. Let people know that you exist. Okay? In today's society, it's important that we be safe as we possibly can. You should be aware of cybersecurity threats for your small business. We can't be too careful nowadays. I think it's just critical that we have some checks and balances to keep ourselves safe as possible. And then prepare and plan for emergencies. I like to look at this as financial planning, if you will. There's lots of planning that you might want to do closely related to cybersecurity. You have certain checks and balances for your technology that you have. But in addition to your technology, I think it's important to make certain that you plan and secure yourself, plan for emergencies financially. Because if we just simply think back to looking at where we are today, who knew anything about this thing called the pandemic? And for a lot of businesses that unfortunately were not financially prepared, they had to shut down and lost their livelihood. So I think when it comes to prepare for emergencies, I think financial planning is the key and most important aspect of planning. It comes to a point in time, and no one really thinks about this, but it's important, I believe, to think about it. I've been here myself, where you will close or either sell your business. This, again, is very closely related to the times that we're seeing today in the pandemic. A lot of people had to close their businesses because of what I just said. We had not planned and prepared for this, where we didn't know that this was coming. But will you close or will you sell the business? Those are two completely different things. Do you just close and walk away? Or do you sell the business? Which do you do? There's also another step that's not mentioned here, but I'll share it with you. It's succession planning. Are you going to pass this business off to perhaps a family member, a friend, a coworker, an employee? Who will take the business over? This is all a part of planning, and it's really important for those of you who are existing business owners and may have been operating for 10, 15, 20 years. What's your next step is the question. What is your next step? Again, this particular outline it's not necessarily in order, but this is certainly something that you may be thinking about, and that is hire employees with disabilities to give people an opportunity to actually go out and to do work and feel good about themselves. So this final step and final thing that I'll talk about with regards to what SBA is offering, you're growing your business, and this is leading more towards those of you who may be existing business owners on this particular presentation tonight. So you want to grow your business. That simply means you need to get more funding. Remember earlier, you're getting initial monies to get started. But one way to grow a business is to get more funding. So what might we get more funding for? It could very well be you're looking at another/new location. Expands a business. You have one, you may have two. I'm currently working with a client that's in the baking business, as I mentioned a moment ago. This particular business is a home-based business. So what we're looking for is a location that's outside of the home, because she's outgrowing her small kitchen that she has at home. She needs a commercial kitchen. So in short, she's expanding her business. So that's one of the things you can do in terms of how you grow a business. Another way that you can grow a business, which is very feasible to do, is what's called mergers and acquisitions. So you merge slash or even acquire another business. It's a great concept. Two businesses that are similar, could complement one another, you merge together. Or you could be in business and decide, I've weathered the storm through the pandemic. I see someone's business that's failing. They can't make it. Perhaps I can acquire their business to help my business continue to grow. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. So these are two options that you have in terms of growing your business. Another option to grow in your business is perhaps getting into contracting work. So if you've been in the business for a few years, perhaps you might want to look at federal contracts, doing business with the government. Now you're transitioning from the private sector, going over now to the public sector, to the government sector. It's a whole different kind of a ball game, but it could potentially turn out to be something very valuable. So it's an option, something for you to think about if you would like to do something of that nature. The question is, are you the type of business that the product or service that you offer, could it be exported? Now you're going into another country, exporting what you do. You have that type of product. If you are a woman-owned business, and I think that tonight's presentation is just men, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's what Samuel told me. If you happen to have a family member or friend that you know of that's in business and they're trying to grow their business, you could pass this information on to them. Women-owned businesses, there are opportunities for women-owned businesses, especially with the government. You will find that they'll show you that there's funding for small business for women that own businesses. Just keep in mind, the monies are still the same monies. It's in the bank and it's still the same monies, but there are programs out there for women-owned businesses. Same as and I won't go through all of these, but as you can see, the same thing is held true for Native American-owned businesses. There are programs for Native American-owned businesses, which is another vehicle, another way to actually grow your business. The same thing with the veteran-owned business. There are programs for veteran-owned businesses. It's another way to grow your business. The same thing with the LGBT business ownership. There's programs for the LGBT community as well to help grow your business. And then I'm going to skip down to the last one. This is the one that I believe will probably, when it comes to doing contracting work, will probably be the one that most people in this audience would probably, I say, qualify for. And that is doing some kind of government programs with the federal government, some sort of contracting work with the federal government, getting involved in some of these things that's known as hub zones, as well as some of this 80 certification program, which a business has to be in business for at least a year. I believe it's 2 years unless they change that criteria, that you can do business with the federal government. So this is a quick look at, if you will, the planning phase of a business, when you launch a business, and the management of that business. And then for those of you that might be a little further along, and now you are growing your business, and it gives you some options in terms of how you do so. I would suggest to you, when you get an opportunity, as I said earlier, go to the SBA.gov's website. This information is there all the time. This is the hub, if you will, of small business information. And take a look at what we just looked at this evening, more in detail, and familiarize yourself so you'll know exactly where to go to get more information. And what I'd like to do, I'm going to stop share this screen, and I've got one other thing that I'd like to show you before I conclude, and that is, if anybody's interested, as Samuel mentioned earlier, tonight I am with the Community College of Baltimore County Center for Business Innovation. And if anyone that's in the audience this evening, if you're thinking about starting or growing a business, we have a program for you. Unbelievable prices program of only $99. It's a 6-week long training program, 12 sessions. One actually started today, a Zoom program. My program that I actually teach myself starts April the 20th in Owings Mills. This is a program where we go over a lot of the things that we just talked about this evening so far. How to start the business, how to write a business plan, how to grow your business, you name it. This is truly, truly a worthwhile program. So if anybody is potentially interested, please reach out to myself or either Samuel, and we can give you more detailed information about this program. So with that said, I'd just like to say thank you for having me this evening. Hopefully some of the information that I shared with you will be helpful. And I wish all of you the best of luck, for those of you that are startup businesses, as well as those of you that are existing businesses and growing your businesses. The best of luck to you all in your business endeavors. Samuel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lee. Does anybody have a question or two